So today we are going to learn something about forecasting, which is obviously a part of marketing in our curriculum. Forecasting represents all those techniques that businesses rely on for predicting the future trends. And when we use this term future trends, we are referring to trends in terms of the expected sales data or possibly the anticipated changes in government policies or the expected behavior of customers. And primarily, these techniques are used with the objective of minimizing the risk factor that is associated with future investments or future ventures. So, forecasting, broadly speaking, can be classified into qualitative forecasting and quantitative forecasting. Qualitative forecasting is recommended in a situation where the data is insufficient or it is non existent or it's incomplete. So, generally, businesses they are advised to rely on these qualitative forecasting techniques, and quantitative obviously would be preferred in case sufficient amount of data is available and of course you are in a position to carry out some calculations. So the first qualitative forecasting technique, that is called personal insight. In this simple method, a manager would just try and predict the future trends without relying on any data or any concrete evidence. Maybe it is based on his experience, his observation. He would just predict, he would use his judgment and try to predict the future trends that, in my opinion, this particular product will be in demand in the future. But if somebody asks him to somehow authenticate that information or that recommendation, he won't be able to do so because it is purely based on his personal insight or personal judgment. So, I mean, he could be absolutely right, he could be totally wrong. It depends on how qualified or how experienced that manager is. That's number one. This is followed by, personal insight is followed by panel consensus. So, as the name suggests, in panel consensus, it is a group of panelists or a group of experts who will have a discussion. They will exchange views regarding the anticipated trends and try to reach a consensus or an agreement. That's panel consensus, and this is considered to be slightly more reliable than personal insight for the simple reason, as they say, two heads are better than one. There are multiple individuals, numerous experts possibly, who are expressing their views regarding the anticipated trends. So, quite possible that their information is more accurate or their prediction proves to be more authentic in the long run. Then, after panel consensus, we have the Delphi method, DELPHI. The Delphi method is quite similar to panel consensus because this also involves a group of panelists who will have a discussion on the anticipated trends. But the only difference between panel consensus and the Delphi method is that in Delphi method, each panelist, he prepares his own report, preferably in black and white, in a written form, individually. So he will express his opinion, he will finalize his report, and then he will disclose it to the other panelists. So in this way, in Delphi method, or by relying on the Delphi method, we can ensure that each panelist expresses his real opinion without being dominated by or influenced by the other panelists. So this might prove to be slightly more accurate than panel consensus for the reason that I just stated. They will all, because in panel consensus, they're all having a discussion, and quite possible that, one panelist, he would like to disagree, but he doesn't because he's influenced by, or he's under pressure, or he's dominated by the other group members, which will not be the case when it comes to the Delphi method, right? Then we have historical analogy. So historical analogy is simply a forecasting technique, a qualitative forecasting technique, which is based on the past experience of the manager or the person who is at the helm of affairs. So you can predict the future trends, you can forecast the future trends on the basis of your past experience also, whatever you have observed in the past. And this is typically used in case of products that follow a certain pattern or a certain cycle. Seasonal products, there's a certain pattern that they follow, and of course, you know, there's certain products their demand fluctuates depending on the change in weather conditions, for instance. So in such situations, historical analogy proves to be a recommended technique, or a technique which might lead to reasonably accurate results. Right? That's historical analogy. Just trying to predict the future trends on the basis of your past experience. And the last one is called market surveys. This is market research, basically. Market survey. You can just carry out a market survey. You can use research instruments like questionnaires or interviews or mechanical instruments. You can talk to people, and based on their feedback, based on the dialogue that you have with your potential customers, you can try and come up with a plan or a strategy pertaining to your future investments. And you can add certain features to the product, or you can price your product in the light of the suggestions or the opinion expressed by these potential customers. So that's your market survey. So all of these techniques, these are categorized as, or they're labeled as qualitative forecasting techniques. I have already recorded a lecture on quantitative forecasting techniques, but I would like to emphasize that variance analysis perhaps is the most crucial one when it comes to quantitative forecasting techniques. Sometimes we use the term time series analysis or moving averages for this also. So the term variance basically represents a deviation from a standardized path, or in simpler terms, variance is the difference between the budgeted and the actual figures. And needless to say, a variance could be favorable or adverse. So these are very simple calculations, and if you go through the past papers, there are quite a few questions based on variance analysis. So for instance, if the budgeted figure for let's suppose variable costs is $10,000, and actually when you start working on the project, you end up spending $12,000. So that is $2,000 adverse, because your actual costs exceed the budgeted costs. And had this been, regarding sales volume, for instance, if the budgeted sales are 10,000 and the actual sales are 12,000, then that would be 2,000 favorable variance, because obviously, if the actual sales exceed the estimated figures, obviously, this is something that would certainly excite the investors, and this would be regarded as a favorable situation. Very simple calculation, but you have to be careful when it comes to the comments. Putting yourself in their position or in their shoes, you should be able to comment on that variance. You have to be, it's quite simple, but you have to be cautious in assessing the situation and then deciding whether it's a favorable variance or an adverse one, right? So all of these forecasting techniques, they definitely facilitate investors, assist businesses in taking better decisions when it comes to future investments or the activities that they plan to carry out in the future. But obviously, absolute accuracy cannot be guaranteed. That is why I just mentioned variance analysis also, right? So this should be